Right, hello, welcome back to the Big Football Forum podcast. Hosting as always, my name's Dan, and joining me this evening are the usual posse of Paul, Prof Gunnar.
Evening.
And we've also got Kaan, Carnage.
Hello.
Are we well, gentlemen?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, not too bad, Daniel.
Good stuff. Well, it's been a eventful weekend, shall we say, with regards to officiating in the top flight. Some have described it as a Halloween horror show and all that sort of tacky commercial business. Personally, I'd like to say that I think a good place as any to start off would be at Goodison Park, where my beloved Liverpool had a 2-2 draw with Everton. Some of the officiating has caused tongues to wag, but it was a game of football that had it all, really. You know, it was end-to-end. Liverpool had a 2-goal lead, which was let slip, and we had the goal disallowed in the last minute, and there could have been a couple of red cards here, there, and the other. And we also had the hilarious Suarez celebration in front of David Moyes, who might now think twice about opening his trap. Did you, gentlemen, watch the game at all?
I've not seen the game, Dan. I've only seen some very brief highlights. I was at Wembley for the NFL yesterday afternoon, so I can tell you all about the flaws in the St. Louis Rams defence, but that might not be overly helpful. But I think I've seen most of the main incidents in the games from yesterday. So if Kaan wants to lead off, and then I'll chip in with what I've seen.
Well, I did manage to. I did see both the games yesterday. I enjoyed both of them immensely. I was enjoying the Liverpool game, particularly when they were 2-0 down. But yeah, it was cracking stuff. I mean, I think I'll let Dan sort of wax lyrical about the controversies of this particular one, because I think he'll feel the pain more than me, particularly as he's already mentioned. There was the goal wrongly ruled out right at the end, which obviously would be absolutely gutted if it happened to your team. Yeah, I think Dan must be itching to come in on this one, so let's let him go for it. I think.
How did you guess? I think that the thing with the disallowed goal was, there was a lot of discussion at the time. Was it disallowed for a foul or was it disallowed for offside? It was clearly given for offside. At the time it wasn't clear, but my best mate Gary Neville, who is a wonderful pundit, he really is, and I'm being deadly serious there as well. He looks across the line, and the flag goes up when Everton players put their hands up half-heartedly for offside. And that's when the flag goes up, so it's clearly for offside. I've seen.
Oh, it's definitely offside, Dan. It's the wrong signal to be anything other than offside.
Well, considering how wrong the offside decision was, it wouldn't surprise me if he put the flag up wrongly.
And it was also about 17 minutes after it happened as well, when he actually.
Exactly, yeah. He turned. He actually had his foot planted to go back to halfway, and then the blue hands go up, and then suddenly he changes his mind and waves across the line. And there's people saying that it could have been disallowed for a foul in the air by Coates on Jagielka, and yet it could have.
It's definitely a foul. I mean, it's clearly a foul, but he hasn't given it for the foul. That's the point. They've missed the foul between them, the referee and the linesman, and they've given it for offside, which is
what I will say in Mr. Mariner's favour almost is that there was plenty of fouls in the air all game, and he didn't give any of them. He let that side of the game go. Fellaini in particular, some of the challenges he made on Joe Allen were absolutely ridiculous. I know he's a lot taller than him, but Joe Allen can compete in the air, but he wasn't, because he was being held down. So if a free kick would have been given, I would have been annoyed, but I could have understood the decision, because it's a foul.
It was a foul.
It was a foul, yeah.
It doesn't surprise me what you say about Fellaini, though, because I think Fellaini fouls people most times he jumps in the air, personally.
Yeah, he's a good player, but he is unorthodox in the air, shall we say. But that's beside the point. It was given for offside, and don't get me wrong, Everton deserved a draw. The way they come roaring back when we went 2-0 up, I mean, I maintain we set them on the way with some very poor goalkeeping for the first goal. And we didn't look comfortable after that. I mean, you've got to give Brendan Rodgers a lot of due for changing the system as much as he did at half time when we suddenly started playing with 3 centre backs. He hooked Nori Sahin, and he hooked Suso, who just wasn't in the game. It sort of like passed him by. It was like watching Lost in Translation for him and for Andre Wisdom to an extent. But it's just what disappoints me about the game more than anything is that at the end of it, instead of talking about what wasn't, as Kaan has already said, like backwards and forwards, exciting, pulsating game, we're talking about officials and not the game, and that's not for. I mean, as I said, there could have been multiple red cards. Like Suarez probably should have gone off. I don't think he deliberately meant to do Distan as badly as he did, but that's a yellow card. He should have been booked earlier on as well, so he should have had 2 yellows. I think Jagielka could have had a couple of yellows here and there. He was rightly not sent off because I don't think Sterling would have caught the ball. In that game, you could probably, if you wanted to, as a referee, send about 3 people per team off.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, again, like I say, I've only seen relatively limited highlights. The free kick that leads to the Liverpool second goal, I don't think is a foul.
Let me think.
Given against Osman on Sterling,
it was soft.
Foul there.
It was soft.
I don't think there's a foul there. I think Osman is entitled to put his body in a position where Sterling's got to change his direction of travel. I think he's entitled to do that. He doesn't have to get out of the way. So if Sterling happens to be running across the front of him, I'm not convinced that that's a foul. There's very, very minimal contact. I thought the referee got that one wrong, having seen it and seen a couple of slow motion replays. And certainly, I mean, the offside decision's incredible because that's not a hard decision to get right. I think we're going to talk about some slightly later that were much, much tougher over this weekend.
Well, I think sometimes when you see a goal that's offside, even just watching on TV, it's often quite easy to spot when it's blatant. And I saw the Suarez goal that there wasn't, and I didn't sort of think obviously straight away, it must be offside, and and obviously because it wasn't, but I don't know, it's a very, very, very strange one.
What I'm sure you're expecting me to say, Kaan, is you're quite right, Paul. It was a soft free kick, but it was also never an Everton throw-in for the equaliser as well, which you may not have seen if you've only seen the highlights, because the highlights don't tend to.
I've not seen that far back into the move. Yeah. So
Kaan won't disagree with me on that, I'm sure. Having seen the game, it was clearly Liverpool's throw-in, but either way, I don't begrudge Everton a draw. They were well worth it. We were well worth it as well. It was a great game. It's just a shame that that goal was snatched off us at the end. We wouldn't have deserved to win, and it would have masked the fact that we were 2-0 up and looking very comfortable before a silly error lets Everton back into it. But it is what it is. We're making progress. Everton are making progress. So I think both sets of fans would probably have taken that at the start of the day, to be honest. I know I certainly would, but I'm of the opinion that you draw your away derby and win your home one. So that's just me.
I think 2 things to pick up. I mean, very, very quickly on the first Everton goal, it's a dreadful punch by Brad Jones.
Awful.
I appreciate what Brendan Rodgers has tried to do at Liverpool and say nobody's place is beyond question. But this comes back to a point I made in relation to the Brad Friedel, Hugo Lloris situation at Spurs a couple of weeks ago. Hugo Lloris is a better goalkeeper than Brad Friedel, and therefore he should play. Regardless of how good Brad Friedel's been for Spurs last week or 2 seasons ago or 3 months ago, it's irrelevant. You pick, when fit, your best goalkeeper. Liverpool's best goalkeeper, despite the mistakes he's made at the start of this season, is Pepe Reina, and it was a mistake not to pick him.
Agreed. I completely agree on that. I don't know if Reina was fully fit or not, and that was possibly a doubt. But
I mean, there may have been a question about that. Second quick point, just to pay testimony to Sylvain Distan, who I believe is now the non-UK or Irish player with most outfield appearances in the Premier League era. And I think he passed George Boateng's record yesterday. So it's a great testament to Sylvain Distan, who's been a good player in the league for a long, long time.
Yeah, he's a good centre-half, Distan. He's got that little bit of pace, to get across. And he's a good footballer. I like Distan. He's a good player. Particularly liked his back pass in the FA Cup semi-final last year. But we'll move on from there. Kaan, there was plenty of controversy in your game as well. But what I will say before we get into that is, again, what a belting game of football that was.
Absolutely fantastic. I didn't notice any controversy, actually, Dan. I don't know. You're alluding to the whole routine win, wasn't it?
Well, if we look at the decisions one by one, I mean, first of all, I think a lot of credit's got to go to United for the way they started. I thought the game was over after 15 minutes.
Well, it's such a strange one. I mean, I wouldn't have expected us to take the lead, let alone a 2-goal lead. With bear in mind, we've not won there in 10 years. We've got a dreadful record there. Even when we play well, we don't win. And the way we've been playing this season, by throwing a goal or two in before we even, start to look like a football side, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing, and I did think it was too good to be true. But the players Chelsea have got now going forward, you can't hold them back for too long because they've just got too much, and certainly with our midfield being far from the best out there. So to be honest, I didn't expect it to be smooth sailing even at 2-0. To be quite honest with you, especially having watched the Merseyside derby just an hour before. But yeah, so I don't know how we want to play this in terms of dissecting what happened next, or where you want to start on this one, Dan. I mean, if I may, just on the, I think the first sort of controversial one would be the Torres sort of scissor kick, throat high attack, which I think Gary Neville was quite right that, and I think most people have said he should have gone for that.
It was a red card. It was plain and simple. It was sweet chin music. Shawn Michaels would have been proud of that.
Yeah, I've not seen that one, so I can't comment. I'm only going on second-hand.
It was a ludicrous attempt to tackle.
Second-hand analysis, but from what I've heard, it was a pretty shocking challenge.
Yeah, no, it was, and I mean, I think you've already mentioned him, but I think Gary Neville after the game was saying that that the ref got them both wrong, referring to the Torres incident, in the sense that the first yellow should have been a red and the second yellow shouldn't have been a yellow, and I'm inclined to agree with that. But obviously that's not necessarily a done deal in itself. I think it's the second one in particular seems to be the most controversial. I think most people think the first one was a red. Everyone seems to have a different view on the second one. There was contact. I don't think Torres actually made that much of a meal of it in the grand scheme of things compared to other dives, or in inverted commas dives, whatever the right term for them is now. And I think most players probably would have gone to ground for that. My first instinct was that he was going to book Evans, to be quite honest with you, and I think Evans did as well.
I think what I will say to you there, Kaan, is just to play devil's advocate. I think Torres is entitled to try and get out of the way of that tackle, because I don't think that was a good tackle at all. I thought that was actually pretty dangerous.
No, I think that's fair. I think it was far from a cynical dive. Like I've seen far worse. I think that was the kind of incident where normally what would happen is the striker would go down and the defender would get booked, and if he was the last man, he'd get a red or whatever. But it wasn't the case this time, and I think everyone in the stadium was probably amazed at the outcome. I don't think anyone would have thought that would happen.
If you're going to book someone for diving, you need to be 100% sure they've dived. I mean, Andre Mariner had got the Phil Neville dive, which was hilarious, by the way, spot on. No, it's a dive. It's a clear yellow card. And to give Phil Neville his due, he came out after the game and virtually admitted to diving and said that he won't do that again. And credit to him for it. But with that, if you're going to give a dive there, you've got to question, as you said, there was contact. The referee should see the contact, but he's got nothing to gain by going down there, particularly because he could have gone through.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, that's not always a fair analysis, though, because there are plenty of people who go down when there's no reason for them to.
True, but Torres
gain advantage by going through. I mean, it's just it just isn't a dive. He's been fouled. Johnny Evans has fouled him.
Plain and simple.
He's knocked the ball past Johnny Evans, and Johnny Evans has come and caught his standing leg. It's as clear as day a foul, and it's as clear as day a yellow card.
Yeah, I agree.
For Johnny Evans, I can't. I mean, all this about Torres fouled dramatically. Well,
I don't agree with that at all.
I'm not sure the referee should be deciding decisions on the way someone falls over.
I think a point I made on the forum earlier, and I don't know whether you both agree, is Mr. Clattenburg seemed to go racing over as though he'd made a snap decision. I'm going to vote for Fernando Torres.
He's one of them. He's got his hand in his pocket before he's blown his whistle the majority of the time.
Exactly, and that's what's he's not set himself to have a think about it. But
I also just go back from Torres just slightly, Dan. I'm not 100% convinced about the Ivanovic sending off.
Really?
I'm not 100% convinced. I think Ashley Young's looked for that.
I think Ashley Young looks for everything. As you know, that's what he does. But
And again, I haven't seen it sort of. I haven't seen it, obviously watching it in the context of a game. I've only seen it in the snap of a highlights. But even from the original camera angle, I mean, from the original camera angle, I thought, oh, that looks, it looks as though he might have caught him. The more slow motion replays you see, the more you see the contact's minimal. And I actually think Young's engineered the contact.
He has.
I'm not 100% sure that's a red card. I have to say, I don't know what a defender can do there. Other than stop and stand still, what is Branislav Ivanovic supposed to do? Again, it comes back to the same as what I've said about Osman with Sterling. The defender doesn't have to change his path of running. He doesn't have to get out of the way of the attacker. And it's one of them. I think it's probably, if he's made contact, it's a foul. I'm not convinced it's a red card. And I know people will go, well, he's the last man, he's the last man. The wording isn't last man. The wording's clear goal scoring opportunity. And I don't know. I think Branislav Ivanovic was slightly hard done to. I think, if anything, the other way round should have happened. That's the one where I'd have been more tempted to book the attacker.
I agree that Ashley Young has engineered the contact, and I agree that Ivanovic has got nowhere to go, and not a lot he can do about it. But what I would say to you there is, if the referee decides that's a foul, that's the only decision he can make. Agreed?
Well, possibly.
Because Young was through, and Ivanovic would have been. Ivanovic denied him a clear goal scoring opportunity. Whether he meant to or not, is like we are going to debate this now, because I'm sure Kaan is going to come back with his opinion on it now.
Well, I wouldn't go so far. I don't know if he did engineer the contact. I'd probably have to see it again, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think it was the most sort of cast iron that I've ever seen, and I think Paul's probably right to question it. I mean, I know Ashley Young does have a reputation. I don't think this was one of these more exaggerated flailings, if you like. I'm not sure, but I think it was a red, but I can see why it's one that you could question. What's your term, Paul? A yellow red or an orange red or something?
That? I think it's a dark yellow. It was an Arsene Wenger phrase originally for a Jermaine Jenas sending off against Arsenal. I think he called it a dark yellow, and I think it's. For me, it was in that category. I don't know. I think Ivanovic was slightly hard done to. I feel a little bit sorry for him. Again, just a couple of other things I've picked up, Dan, out of the game before we come to the winning goal. Gary Cahill for the second Manchester United goal, simply not good enough.
Went walkies.
Undone by good movement by Defoe last week. Undone by good movement by Van Persie this week. He's just not up to the standard. I don't know how anyone who watches him play can honestly believe that he is good enough to consistently be starting in a team that's got aspirations to win the Premier League and win the Champions League. Now, I know people will come back and say, well, he played in a team that won the Champions League last May, and that is true. There's no denying that. But he will get caught out time and time again by anybody with a little bit of movement, because he doesn't follow it. He's a centre-half who stands. He gets caught ball watching. And, I mean, okay, Robin Van Persie's world-class, so he won't be the only one who'll get undone by his movement. Jermaine Defoe isn't world-class, and his movement got him last week. It'll happen time and time again, and I still think, okay, they ended up with 9 men yesterday. They conceded 3 goals. I still think if there's a question mark about this Chelsea team, it's in the middle of the back four. I know they haven't got John Terry available to him at the moment, but he's maybe not quite the force he once was. Luiz is, I think, inconsistent, if we're going to be fair to him. And Cahill, for me, just isn't top class and won't ever be.
I think that Chelsea's weakness is the defence, because going forward they're a pretty tasty unit, really. You could argue that maybe Torres is the weakest link.
Yeah, but and the fact that they don't really have any alternative to Torres, do they? He has to start. I mean, obviously he won't be able to start now for 3 games, or maybe only 1 game for 2 yellows.
Just be one game, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see who they play through the middle in that game. Do they play Moses or do they play Sturridge? I've no idea. I think Sturridge has generally come on in that position, but for me, Victor Moses has got more of the tools actually to play as a lone front man than Sturridge has. Yeah, maybe the question mark about Torres, but certainly the two centre halves I worry about a little bit. Which brings us nicely onto the winning goal.
Yeah, it was. Well, I personally have some sympathy with the referee. Well, not the referee because it's not his decision. The official, because that happened very quickly. But he should be using the goalkeeper there as a barometer, and I don't think he did. I don't think the goalkeeper entered his thinking. But it's an understandable decision, and the offside at Goodison obviously affects my team, but that's inexplicable. There is no reason to disallow that goal. But with this one, I understand why this one was missed. I don't buy this as being, a big, really, really poor decision. Personally, I think it's just unlucky.
There was one a couple of weeks ago, Dan. I can't remember what game it was, and I said on the forum that they are the most difficult ones to get right for a linesman. When players are crossing and the ball is coming from very close. If the ball's 40 yards away and players are crossing, it's easier to get right. But if players are crossing and they're within 10, 15 yards of the ball, that is so difficult to work out at precisely the point the ball's been kicked where they are in that crossing path. And the problem is that the players are crossing because Hernandez is coming back out from the goal line and the Chelsea defender's taking a step back towards the goal line. He's got it wrong, the linesman. He should have put his flag up. Hernandez was offside. But those are so tough to get right. They are the toughest types of decisions linesmen have to make. And whilst he's got it wrong, I think it's almost understandable.
It is understandable. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel sorry for Chelsea there because it's not. It's offside. Yeah. And, but they were stretched. I still believe United would have gone on to win the game because Chelsea weren't going to do.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Again, I haven't seen the game, but you sort of get the sense if United still needed a goal to win it against 9 men, they'd have gone for the jugular. In the last sort of 10 minutes of the game or so. So,
would you agree that was a tough decision, Kaan?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean, it was kind of pretty obvious to me that he was, he did like unlike the Suarez one where they didn't seem anything controversial about it. It just seemed a ridiculous decision to call it offside, but it wasn't. The Hernandez one, I think, did look quite obvious, but at the same time, the way it had sort of almost gone in and the way it kind of ran out of the goal, I mean, I suppose it is a bit confused, but at the same time, if your job is to keep an eye on that sort of thing, is it that difficult?
You could tell in real time it was close, but that goal had as you say, it had different phases of play. The shot nearly went in, which was a goalkeeping mistake, by the way. That could have been avoided. That whole passage of play could have been avoided, but there we go. It was another phase of play, and that's where confusion must begin. And sometimes I feel sorry for linesmen that they don't know whether they're coming or going. But I think that it was a tough decision, but you could tell in real time it was very, very close. Yeah. Right, we'll move on from there, or I might get a threatening email from Mark Klassenberg, allegedly. If we have a look then at Newcastle's win over West Brom, Matt, the Newcastle fan on the forum, has not been very impressed this season. He seems to think they're riding the luck a little bit, leaving it late to beat West Brom, but a win is a win. Yeah,
I was at Wembley with a Newcastle fan yesterday afternoon at the NFL who said that their season has not really got started yet and was hoping that sort of scoring in the way they scored right at the death yesterday maybe sort of kick-starts them on. They've still got this problem for me that they've got two very good centre-forwards who can't play together, and trying to shoehorn them into a system is proving difficult. They've still not scored when they've both been on the pitch. By the time Cisse scored yesterday, Bar was off the field. I think Bar's actually picked up an injury now, so he's going to miss a few more games. I think the problem with Cisse is that when he doesn't score, I'm not sure how much else he offers. Bar's a good target man. He holds the ball up well. He does a lot off the ball. So I think Newcastle are slightly unbalanced. I hear, again, I've not seen the game, I hear West Brom were maybe slightly unfortunate to get beat yesterday, which says, again, as we've said in the other podcasts we've done this season, quite a lot about how well West Brom are playing. For Newcastle, they just haven't found that groove that they were in this time last year where you almost expected them to win every game. And it's about trying to find their rhythm, I think, at the moment, because because they're not quite there. They do have quite a small squad, and they've had a few injuries, and they're playing Thursday nights in the Coca-Cola Cup or whatever it's called these days. And I think that is sort of unbalancing them slightly. So it was an important win though yesterday, and to get it right at the death, maybe that's a little spark their season needed.
Knowing my luck, they'll find the form next week, but there we go. They visit Anfield on Sunday afternoon, I think it is.
Haven't they got an absolutely dreadful record at Anfield?
They have, but so have we. So, if we move on to Southampton against Spurs, Gareth Bale was always going to come back to haunt his old team because Southampton can't defend.
Yeah, Southampton's back for it. I mean, that's a question how they won the championship with it. To be honest, it's that bad.
It's like playing Southampton at the moment for a striker is like Christmas come early.
And they've tried 17 different goalkeepers so far this season as well, haven't they? I mean, it's slightly ridiculous. Yeah, they need to improve defensively. I thought they might have nicked a point from that one yesterday.
And deserve one by all accounts.
At home. Well, again, as a second half from what I hear, put Spurs under pressure. Again, at home, I think they will create chances. The problem is they have to score minimum 2 goals to get anything out of a game because their back four's that bad. And
you just can't go on doing that because they're not going to have enough of the ball against the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester. I mean, Arsenal absolutely battered them, didn't they? I know United keep conceding goals, but they still got the job done in the end at St Mary's. They need to tighten up. It's as simple as that, or they're going to go down. Which they do try and approach the game the right way, and you've got to give them credit for that. But they need to do.
Although I mean, you have, but he's changed his system, hasn't he? They've come up 2 leagues playing 4-4-2, and he's gone to 4-3-3. And for me, I don't know. I think you stick at what you're good at, and Southampton have won 2 leagues playing 4-4-2, or been promoted twice certainly. They're trying to play a new system and learn it in the Premier League, and that's tough. I'm not sure Nigel Adkins actually has been making very good decisions so far this season. I wonder if maybe he's finding the step up himself a little bit.
Quite possibly, yeah. I mean, like 4-3-3 is the new 4-2-3-1, isn't it? Every bugger seems to be giving it a whirl. And I mean, I hope Southampton tighten up at the back because I like the way they approach the game, even if it's not always successful. If we then backtrack to Saturday, return for Paul Lambert to. Well, no, that's wrong because Paul Lambert didn't return to Norwich. Norwich visited Paul Lambert in the Midlands in it was a bit of a dour game, really. Did you watch it at all, Kaan?
I did not, I'm afraid. I haven't seen much of Saturday's action, or indeed the games that weren't on the telly yesterday. So I'm afraid I'm perhaps not best placed to comment on that.
You didn't miss any action.
Just going to say,
any action in the Villa Norwich game, Con. I wouldn't worry about that action.
Yeah, I don't think there's much. I don't think there's much action in any of Villa's games. I mean, I just don't understand them. They just, I don't know. They just seem such a nothing side almost. I just don't see what they offer. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that there probably are, just a couple of, obviously we talked about, Southampton's defence and obviously the likes of QPR and Reading are quite weak. I mean, they really will be in trouble. I think Chris on the forum said, they're in a relegation battle, and he's not wrong. They look desperate. I just don't see the good players in the team at all.
Well, I mean, for me, their best player isn't in the team. I absolutely agree with something Paul Merson said, which isn't a phrase you'll hear me utter very often.
Or anyone.
But he said... He said on Soccer Saturday when they were previewing that game before it kicked off on Saturday afternoon, he said they were talking about Benteke versus Bent and who should start up front if they're going to play one and Bent's on the bench. And Paul Merson said, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy when you're in Aston Villa's position that you can afford to have a guy with a track record of scoring 20 goals a season in the Premier League sitting on your substitutes bench because he doesn't work hard or he doesn't hold the ball up or he doesn't do this or he doesn't do that. Aston Villa needs someone to win in football matches, and Darren Bent does that. So
he does.
I'm absolutely with Merce on that. I cannot understand for the life of me why he's not in the Villa team.
Darren Bent's one of those strange players where he's not really very good, but he just scores goals. That's what he does.
Absolutely. When you look at the rest of that Villa squad, who else is going to score him?
Oh, well, Benteke has been scoring goals. He scored at the weekend as well, but he's only a young fella, and you got to question, is he going to score 20 goals as he's Bentwood?
He's also missed some sitters, Dan. 0-0 at Tottenham. He has a great chance to put them in front.
Yes,
doesn't take it.
He does.
Darren Bent scores there. There's no question about it. Darren Bent scores that chance. And they're going to be the difference between Villa staying up or not staying up. I just think it's bizarre, personally. Anyway.
Yeah.
And actually, I was flicking between that and Soccer Saturday and one or two other things. So I didn't watch the whole game because I couldn't have stayed awake for it. But every time I flicked over, it looked to me like Norwich were camped in the Villa, the Villa defensive third, certainly.
Yeah, it was just a dour game of football. Norwich would have been very pleased with a draw. Obviously, they've now had 2 good results on the spin after a poor start to the season, so they'll be quite pleased with that. We move on then to the Majewski. The wait for Reading still goes on for a win.
Yeah, 1-0 up at half time, and against Fulham, who traditionally in the Premier League don't travel particularly well. You've got to get more than a point out of that, I suppose. And in the end, I think having been behind twice in the second half, they'll probably look at it as maybe a point gained. But they need to start winning some football matches now. I have a lot of respect for Brian McDermott. The way he goes about his job is fantastic, and there doesn't seem to be one iota of panic in him.
But he must be getting concerned about not winning.
But I almost think, well, it's almost to the point where I hate to say start panicking, Brian, but you need to start panicking, because it's interesting. There was a Big Sam who does this weekly article in the Standard, which is generally the Sam Allardyce ego boost article. He does on a Friday night, where he talks about how brilliant a manager he is. And one of the things he said this week was, when he's brought teams up, when he brought Bolton up previously, and when he's brought West Ham up now, he said he breaks the season down into periods of sort of 8 games and then one of 6 games at the end. He says, and you set targets for those 8 games. He said the other managers will say after each game, well, there's another 31, there's another 32 to go, or whatever it might be. But he thinks the risk with that, saying, well, there's always next week, there's always next week. You get to March and you've got 8 points. And then there aren't enough weeks left for you to catch up. And I think that's the risk Reading are running. They're almost so calm about it all. Oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. They risk us to get into Christmas and still not having won and finding themselves pretty much down and out. I just don't think they've got a priori staying up at the moment, to be honest, because they're not. As you say, Fulham. I'm sure Fulham must have one of, if not the worst away record over cumulative seasons in the Premier League. I'm sure of it. Certainly. Yeah.
But they were 1-0 up as well at half time, weren't they? And found themselves 2-1 and then 3-2 down.
Yeah. So, the one thing you have to say about Fulham, fantastic goal scoring record so far this season. They're scoring goals are fun.
Yeah, they're doing well for themselves.
I think now Berbatov's off the leash. Didn't he also break a rib or something and got in a painkilling injection and played on and scored? So I heard.
I think that's Dimitar Berbatov. He far prefers that. He's broken a rib and at half time it's, can you play on? We need you, Dimitar. I think that plays to his ego, and I can't imagine Fergie did much of that for him. It did have been like, I've got one of these other blokes who can come on and I'll run around a bit more. So,
well, I'm going to say he didn't break a rib running.
So I think fair play to Fulham, they're scoring goals, but it looks hard already for Reading.
Stoke Sunderland is our next visit. Do we really need to elaborate on this 0-0? Stoke sounds about right to me.
Charlie Nicholas said the worst moment of the game was when they put 8 minutes of injury time up at the
end. That's another unusual occurrence, because that's me finding Charlie Nicholas funny. I think we can move swiftly on from that one. The less said about it, the better. It didn't sound like a good 0-0. There can be good 0-0s, but that wasn't one of them.
That wasn't one of them.
No. Wigan against West Ham, and I must say I had Wigan down to win that one. I had Wigan on my predictions to win that game.
Yeah, and me, I thought Wigan had nicked that at home. I think. Yeah, I have to say, I think Wigan are probably 2 or 3 points under par for the way they've played so far this season. I think they've deserved slightly better than they got. I know Everton put them under pressure second half, but they should have been out of sight at half time in that game against Everton. And I think they're playing well. They're playing nice football. They've tightened up a little bit at the back from where they were. I still think the new signings they made, Kone for me has been one of the signings of the season. I think Ramis obviously scored on Saturday. I think he had a bit of a horror show on debut against Chelsea, but I think he has helped at the back. They've managed to sort of overcome the loss of Victor Moses without too many problems. I don't see Wigan. Again, it comes back to what Kaan's just said in terms of Villa. There are other teams that are down there, Norwich and Reading and QPR and Southampton. I don't see Wigan needing to win their last sort of 7 of the last 8 games this year to stay up. I think they'll be in that bottom 6 or 7, but I think they'll be fine.
If they do need to, they probably will. That's just what they do.
If you do need to, they probably will. That's right.
More away gloom for West Ham and Big Sam.
Yeah, again, I think West Ham will have snapped your hand off at the start of the season for being where they are now at this point. They've got a really tough run coming up. I think.
They've got a really hard run.
United, Chelsea, all in sort of the space of 4 or 5 weeks. That'll drop them back into trouble, but I've seen more than enough in West Ham to suggest they'll survive.
No, I don't have any doubt whatsoever they'll survive, because Allardyce teams don't give much away, and if you can keep it tight down there, then
they seem to be quite well balanced. West Ham, they're not particularly great in any particular area. They're not particularly bad either. And I think in terms of just staying up, that's kind of what you need. You don't look at them and think, oh, they don't do. It's not that they don't score or that they're always shipping goals. They just seem sort of fairly balanced. And I think like I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, one thing West Ham do have that anyone else doesn't is they have the scruffiest goalkeeper in the league. Because Jaskalainen does.
One of the oldest as well. Now that Brad Friedel's only sort of touch and go for his place at Spurs. There probably isn't anyone older than Jaskalainen, is there?
No, there's definitely someone who he looks like he just rolls out of bed every morning, and just he doesn't look like he ever shaves or washes or anything. He's just.
He does have a sort of a Boris Johnson-like haircut. It has to be said. A bit sort of.
Yeah. The frightening thing, especially for you two, is he's probably more intelligent than Boris Johnson.
I suspect he's definitely more intelligent than him.
But we better not bring politics into sport. If we just want to briefly touch on this game as well, Man City against Swansea. City again don't convince me. I think they're going to have a bad result at home. They've had bad results in Europe. I think they're not too far from having a bad result at home as well.
Yeah, they're not playing great, Manchester City, at all, and there does seem to be a little bit of confusion. I thought Mancini's comments in the week were absolutely hilarious when he was asked about Mika Richards' statement that the players prefer to play a back 4, and Mancini said, no, it's not the tactics, don't blame the tactics. And then he said, that wasn't Mancini accent, by the way, and then he said the tactics are always the same: run and score. And you find it hard to disagree with that. But yeah, I think I get the sense there's 1 or 2 players at Manchester City who maybe have been waiting for an opportunity to sort of
have a pop
at Mancini because they've not been happy, they've not been playing and whatever, and he's making it a little bit easy for him at the moment. I'm a really big fan of Roberto Mancini. I think he's done a really, really good job at Man City, and everyone just dismisses it because he's had money to spend. But I think he's done really, really well there. I'd be sorry to see collapse around him, but at the moment I think he has to be careful. They need to find some fluidity in their performances, and they just need to be more settled as a club. Every week there seems to be a story coming out of Manchester City, and they just need to stop that.
Normally involving Mario Balotelli, to be fair.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's had a couple of weeks off, hasn't he, Mario? And it's been Richards or it's been Joe Hart or somebody else. But no doubt Mario will grace us with his presence.
Well, it's Halloween and Bonfire Night coming up, so expect...
Fireworks.
Expect fireworks, yeah.
Yeah, lock up your bathrooms. Or lock him out of them.
Yeah, don't let Mario loose. The last game, and I've deliberately left this to last because there was yet another controversial refereeing decision. Arsenal against QPR. It was offside. I don't think anyone's disputing that. But is Mark Hughes on a one-way track to joining other managers under pressure?
Well, he's certainly under pressure. I mean, they were unlucky because it was clearly offside. I think Mark Hughes is right. I think Arteta's offside twice. He's offside when Giroud heads it, and he's offside again when Ramsey knocks it back forward. QPR consider themselves particularly unlucky. I think I can understand why the linesman has missed the first one, because I think he could actually legitimately argue, in fact, that Arteta's not interfering with on the Giroud header. But once Ramsey prods it back forward, I mean, it's so obvious he's stood 2 yards offside. And again, maybe just because there's so many players around, the linesman's missed it, but it's not really an excuse. It's not really acceptable. Other than that, I mean, Mark Hughes sort of likes to play it down as a heroic effort, but until Arsenal scored, they were pretty much under the cosh throughout, and without Arsenal ever really playing particularly well. Cesar made a couple of really good saves, particularly one just before the goal. They had a couple of chances in the last few minutes, actually, after Arsenal had sort of got slightly edgy, having had not the best week, I think it's fair to say. But the other problem for QPR, Dan, is they can't keep 11 players on the pitch.
That was ridiculous.
Mark Hughes, almost embarrassingly, originally tried to suggest that Vermaelen had dived when Mbia's kicked him, and it was only when confronted with sort of irrefutable video evidence that he sort of went, no, well, yeah, that's a red card. Now, they've had 9 sendings off since Mark Hughes took over. What's that, January? February?
I think it was January.
Off in the Premier League. Now, he has to look on himself as a manager, because we know he's a manager who likes to get in there and motivate and wind players up. Maybe he actually, with this lot, he has to calm them down a little bit, because if they keep trying to play with 10 men, they'll find themselves in trouble. I've got no doubt that with 11, QPR are better than at least 3 other teams in the Premier League. If they're playing with 10 every week, they're not, and they'll get relegated.
And they're playing with 10 most weeks.
At the moment, they're playing with 10 at least, once in every 3 games. It's a big problem. Mark Hughes needs to get to the bottom of it. And will he be given time? I understand they sort of, they're looking at the game at the weekend and saying, well, if he doesn't win, he could be on his way. Tony Fernandes tweeted this morning, and it's been reported across the media as being a supportive tweet. What he actually says is, we believe Mark Hughes is one of the best managers in the Premier League. Regardless of what happens, we are fully committed to QPR. Not we are fully committed to Mark Hughes. We are fully committed to QPR. That to me reads like, we think Mark Hughes is one of the best managers in the Premier League, but if it comes down to it, for the sake of the club, we would get rid of him. That's how I read what he'd said.
I hadn't seen that or heard that before, but that sounds how it looks to me. I mean, is this the first 6-pointer of the season? Is it too soon for a 6-pointer at 10 games?
No, I wouldn't say so, Cam.
No, I mean, for both, it's a must. In fact, it's almost a must-win for both teams, isn't it? And I don't think it's too early. I think it's probably right if Reading go there and win. I think Mark Hughes will be looking for a job this time next week.
Yeah.
Will he be stood on the touchline making the stamp gesture that he always seems to make? He always seems to accuse players of raking the studs down the back of his players' legs. Always.
Well, that's probably because that's what he did most of the time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, when Neil Warnock was there, the home form was a big problem. Certainly at the end of last season, they seem to have sorted the home form out. But their away form since Hughes has been there is lamentable. They've lost every single away game, I think. They've certainly not won away. I think they may have lost every single Premier League away game. That's lamentable in nearly 12 months for a manager of Mark Hughes' experience. And, Tony Fernandes has given him so much money. For me, they bought too many players. You can't buy 14 players in 12 months and expect it to work.
Scattergun.
It was almost. I mean,
I think there's probably a little bit of a queue developing behind him. We think Nigel Adkins might be under pressure. We think Brian McDermott, if Reading keep losing, they've got a new owner as well. He might be under pressure there. Chris Hughton, I think before the Arsenal game, there were 1 or 2 mutterings among Norwich fans, oh, he's not as good as Lambert, etc. So there is a little bit of a queue developing behind him, but I think Mark Hughes leads the sack race at this moment in time.
Agreed, yeah. If they don't beat Reading, then I think he could well get the boot. And I've got to be honest, irrespective of who he played for, that doesn't bother me. I just dislike the man intensely. He's almost like the manager equivalent of me, because I always go looking for referees at full time, and so does Mark Hughes.
Well, it's good you've admitted your own failings in that sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always go looking for referee. It's not even like me and you. I know you've done it to a higher level than me, but we've tried it. And you know,
I've tried talking to him at the end of the game. You may as well bang your head against a wall majority of the time. You get more sense out of the wall. I mean, for example, apparently the referee at the Emirates on Saturday told Mark Hughes the reason Arteta wasn't offside was Ryan Nelson was off the pitch. Ryan Nelson never left the pitch. You know, was it Craig Burley who famously said in that game last season that they'll go off and concoct a story?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, that sounds like what that is. And when you're standing there as Mark Hughes, you're so angry. I can completely empathise with him because you're so angry, and then they give you an absolute rubbish lie of an excuse. And there's nothing you can say other than say that's complete rubbish. You can't say anything else. That, you know, it's gone, it's done, and you're going home with nothing. And unfortunately for Mark Hughes, that's how it was. They battled hard on Saturday, but I think if they're honest, actually, they'd have to look at it and say Arsenal deserved to edge that game, albeit they probably only deserved to win it 1-0.
Yeah, that's a fair point. One thing I'd like to ask you both is, you know, like we seem to have this point like we have a weekend once a year where the refereeing's terrible, it's got to change. How could we change it? How do you think we could change it if we could?
I don't like I know it was brought in so that there was a group of professionals and that group led the game. I don't like the fact that there's such a small elite group. I think it's something like 16 or 17 who are on the elite group. Now there's 10 games every weekend, so there's not a lot of room for manoeuvre really. And what you tend to find is a lot of referees will do one game as a referee over a weekend and also do a game as a fourth official, which I don't think's particularly conducive to high standards. I just prefer a system where there's more people in the pot, and so your performances are assessed and you're demoted and promoted on a weekly basis as necessary. Ultimately, if you're performing badly consistently in the Premier League, you should go and do 3 or 4 weeks in the Championship. And it used to happen actually, and it can't happen in that same way anymore because of this elite group. If you demote 2 out of the elite group for 3 weeks, all of a sudden you're almost down to not having enough referees to referee the game.
Down to the bare bones.
You're down to Harry's bare bones, and I think that could be changed. Other than that, and giving them the technology to help them, I don't know what else you can do.
You'll get Mike Riley leaning out of a car window, giving you a talk in a minute. But hopefully, as he's approaching a bridge or a tunnel.
No doubt here on Sky Sports News. I understand Graham Poll was on 5 Live this morning, so they're sort of the ones who we were moaning about 10 years ago are all now making a career from criticising them.
Yeah, they'll be making up the Soccer Saturday panel.
Yeah, what's your Ryan Rennie doing? You want
talking to people who will be soon making up the Soccer Saturday, back on the Soccer Saturday panel. It's nice to see Paul Jules back out of a job.
That was never.
No doubt he'll reappear on Soccer Saturday very soon.
Did you have a point you wanted to make about the refereeing, Kaan, or are you
just on Paul's point about the sort of the elite pot and not having that and having a wider net, which I think is fair enough. I think my only sort of thing would be is who populates the pot? You know, where are these other? You know, I don't believe there's necessarily another dozen top referees just sitting around on the sofa at home thinking, maybe I could be doing that. That would be my only sort of challenge or concern about that.
I
actually
agree. I mean, some of the ones in the Championship are just as bad, if not worse. But at least if there's that, I just think at least if there's that motivating factor, it stops the ones in the elite group from becoming sort of complacent.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think you're right. You do need to keep them on the toes, and it's the same with footballers themselves. And you were just saying about how. Brendan Rodgers keeping the Liverpool players on the toes by dropping them. It's the same with everything. You know, if you think you've got a guaranteed place or a start or whatever, then you do risk becoming complacent.
Well, it's nice.
And I think we accept that. Go on, sorry.
No, go on, Kaan. Continue. Sorry, I didn't.
No, I was just going to say, you think about the kind of person that. That becomes a referee, you probably are going to have a bit of a sort of stubborn, arrogant streak within you. So you're probably not going to necessarily want to accept your failures that much. So it's almost like there does need to be a sort of some kind of regulating body that can kind of drop you, but then have people to replace you and not make you think that you're you're irreplaceable.
Well, this is my argument.
Which at the moment I think a lot of them probably do.
This is my argument. I just don't think that there's any accountability. If there's a bad mistake, I just don't feel as though that referee is going to be punished for it. I don't want like humiliation. I don't want like flogged in public or anything like that.
That would be nice, though.
It would, but but I'm glad to hear you both sort of like agree with me on that there needs to be. You've had a bad game. You've had a couple of bad games. You're going down to the Championship for a couple of weeks. I'm glad to hear that there's other people who agree with me on that front. But on the other hand,
I also think, I mean, even within the elite group, Dan, the guys who get the top games, it's the same names over and over again, isn't it? It's Atkinson, Clattenburg, Webb. Consistently, Atkinson, Clattenburg, Webb. Well,
got to be honest, mate, I don't think Clattenburg will be getting one for a while after the weekend.
Well, no, maybe. I mean, obviously, we don't want to say too much about what he's been accused of, and that will run its own course. But I kind of think to myself, well, why should Howard Webb do every Manchester United versus Chelsea game, or the majority of Manchester United Chelsea games, or Manchester United Man City games, or it's Manchester United Arsenal next week. No doubt it'll be one of Webb or Atkinson. So I kind of think even within the elite group, you almost have to be seen to have earned your spurs at the bottom end of that elite group doing Southampton and Wigan. No offence to either of them teams. Before they'll let, you almost have to do that for 4 or 5 years before you're considered worthy of a sort of high-profile game. I can understand the argument that you give the most experienced referees the high-profile matches, but at some point you have to give the guys a chance, or else how are you ever going to learn whether they're any better than the ones you already know about?
Yeah, you don't want Lee Mason to get hold of one of those games, mate. It will be.
I'd prefer Lee Mason not to have a hold of any games.
You're just talking chaos and carnage on unprecedented scales.
Oh, my friend, Mr. Probert, I prefer him.
I was just going to say, I hope Lee Probert gets a mention in this.
Yeah, I prefer Lee Probert not to be refereeing anything. I wouldn't let him referee a kids' five-a-side match, but there we go.
Kevin Friend's my big bugbear.
Yeah, so we've worked out they're all rubbish.
Yeah.
That's basically the answer.
As you know, that has always been my argument. It's just which one's the least rubbish.
Yeah, I still think for all these many faults, I still think Howard Webb is less rubbish than the majority of the others.
No comments on Howard Webb. We're going to go down a whole different tangent of ranting from me, and we don't want that. But I am glad to know that you two have got a solid plan to create the Stuart Atwells of the future. Oh dear. If we move on then to Football League, anything caught your eye over the weekend, Paul? One thing that I'd like to mention actually is that I've just seen that Brian Laws is back at Scunthorpe, which is almost his spiritual home.
Yeah, it was just, that was all I was going to mention, Dan, was just a very quick couple of management things, which is Alan Neil. It's never really worked out for him, has it really, at Scunthorpe? He did such a good job at Bury, and it's just, for some reason, it's just not happened at Scunthorpe, and it's one of them cases for me of a manager just not fitting that job, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the forum. I don't think it was the right fit for him in the first place. Brian Laws has gone back there, he did really well first time round, so we'll wait and see. They're in a bit of a mess though, Scunny. They need to get some results on the board. And talking of one of Brian Law's former clubs, I believe Burnley today have or are about to confirm Sean Dyche as their new manager. And he is, for me, a far better fit at Burnley than Eddie Howe ever was. I said a lot of times during Eddie Howe's short reign at Burnley that Burnley fans are a passionate bunch. They're a proud sort of Lancashire town. They want a manager who gets out there and who wears his heart on his sleeve and who gets his team at it more than anything else. And Eddie Howe's not that type. He's a nice, quiet, intelligent guy. He's a sort of thinking footballer, or was a thinking footballer in his playing days. And I'm not sure that's what Burnley fans want. They want to see a manager out there on the touchline sort of cajoling and encouraging in a really proactive way, sort of, as I say, wearing his heart on his sleeve. And I think Dyche is that type of character. He was very unfairly treated at Watford, and if you look at their results under Zola, I think anyone with half a brain can see that was a bad mistake replacing Dyche with Zola. And I think he'll do well for Burnley. I now have no worries at all about them getting relegated, albeit the first thing he'll have to do is sharpen up the defending. I think the latest rumour at Blackburn is that Henning Berg might be the next manager. They're blatantly just going through a list of ex-Blackburn players and working down it until they find someone who says yes. So if Henning Berg turns it down, no doubt Tim Flowers will be getting the call.
Stuart Ripley.
Stuart Ripley. And at Bolton, I think it's a big job Dougie Friedman's taken on, and I wish him well. I've always liked him as a sort of journeyman championship centre-forward in his playing days. He's done a terrific job at Palace.
Very good job at Palace.
And he's left a really talented bunch at Palace who went and won without him at Leicester at the weekend. That wouldn't be a bad job for someone who's out of work at the moment, the Crystal Palace job. So keep our eyes out for that one. I think Dougie's taken on a big job at Bolton. For me, they can't go up this year. He's got an almighty job on his hands to get them ready to get promoted next season, because if they don't go up next year, the parachute payments stop and then they're stuck.
Yeah, there'll be a bit of them.
And that's it, really.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think the Blackburn job's intriguing me because the big three Bs in the northwest were all managerless at the same time, weren't they, a few weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
And Bolton have sort of resolved that issue, and now Burnley. So everyone's just waiting for. Frankly, Blackburn are a comedy football club just because of the way they run it. It's just that's just the way it is. I think we've covered pretty much everything there. As it was an eventful weekend, it would be difficult to squeeze it all in one go, but I think we've done a decent job there.
I think we have.
Yep. Well, if there's more refereeing like that next weekend, I think we'll be back again next week. We couldn't not discuss the weekend's action.
We'll give the referees a week to sort themselves out.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, mate. I've been saying this for 10 years. But there we go. That's just me. But it's an hard job. Let's not hide behind it. I say you've tried it, Paul, as have I. It's not easy at all.
No, it's not. It's not easy to do. But and I'm still occasionally to be found running the line on a Sunday morning, and that's not easy either. But ultimately at the top level you want a bit more consistency, don't you? And we don't get that, so that's why these incidents will keep coming up. Exactly,
and until Mike Riley actually does something instead of just basically being on the telephone to Brendan Rodgers all the time, then hopefully something will come of it. But we have this weekend every season, don't we?
Yeah, I think this has been a particularly bad weekend.
We're
4 or 5 bad decisions.
Where the Daily Mail have a headline saying screaming things have got to change, and nothing ever does.
That's every day in the Daily Mail.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Immigrant referees are no doubt responsible for this outrage, but that's what happens when you read the Daily Mail. Right, well, we'll leave it there, gentlemen. It's been a good laugh as always, and if you'd like to discuss anything that we've been talking about this evening, you can go to www.big-football-forum.co.uk and you can sign up and log on, and we can resume the discussion online. Particularly the Merseyside derby has caused a lot of discussion this weekend, just generally the state of the refereeing of the weekend. But hopefully we'll be back talking about football next weekend, because I don't know about you two, but that's all I ever want to talk about. I don't want to talk about referees. I just can't help it because they infuriate me so much.
As we've just discussed.
As we've just discussed, yes. I am the Mark Hughes of fans when it comes to referees. And I don't mean unemployed yet. Right, well, thanks very much for joining me, gentlemen, and I shall speak to you both soon, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Good night.